Hello and welcome to part 4 of the long patrol of the town class cruisers. Oof. It is going to be 7 parts. One for each subclasses, yes. This is going to possibly be one of the longest long patrols I've ever done. Anyway, so I'm going to do individual ship stories, but I thought I'd give a rough overview of the conflict as well, so I could talk about some of the bigger operations the town class have an impact on, and where they're useful, where the knowledge of them comes from in World War II. I'm also sorry if there's a bit of a light in this area. I have got my tea on its way, so, just keeping an eye on it. So, what happens when war starts? Well, in September 1939, as we've been over in peacetime, the forces were divided between the home fleet, which had actually become 2nd and 18th Cruiser Squadrons. 2nd Cruiser Squadron was based on the Humber and part of the Humber Force, and it included Southampton and Glasgow. 18th at Scapa Flow. Newcastle, Sheffield, Edinburgh, and Belfast. So basically, 2nd Cruiser Squadron gets split up, depending on operational area. Fourth, well, Manchester will be transferred home in November 1939. Liverpool transferred to the China Station in November 1939, and then transferred back in June to Mediterranean in June 1940. Gloucester will go to Mediterranean in May 1940. And Liverpool will be involved in the Tsingtao Incident, which is, well, basically, here's the fun thing. We had Tsingtao in January 1939. In January 1940, the Royal Navy gets really adventurous and decides they're going to pluck some German merchantmen who are going home to join the war effort off what is the equivalent of, I don't know, the QE2 of the Japanese fleet at that time, just outside of visual range of Tokyo Bay. And they do it, and they get away with it with impunity. Oh, sheesh. And 5th Cruiser Squadron, Birmingham. Transfers to Mediterranean in January 1940, but as we can see, is by July 1940 is with 18th Cruiser Squadron. Why is 18th Cruiser Squadron getting this massive increase? 2nd Cruiser Squadron has basically ceased to exist. Western Approaches Command has HMS Belfast. Always being helpful, Belfast. 18th Cruiser Squadron, Birmingham, Southampton, Newcastle, Sheffield, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Manchester. Might as well call that the town class conglomerate. Why? Why are they there? Well, it's to do with surface raiders, of course. And 7th Cruiser Squadron are in Mediterranean, Liverpool and Gloucester, providing heavy presence where it's needed. Peace becomes war. The point is that I'm trying to make is not only does no plan survive first contact with the enemy, no first contact with the enemy survives the first months of war. Britain had a plan for how to use these ships in terms of war with Germany, in terms of war with Italy, in terms of war with Japan. The plans for a multi-opponent stack-up are there, but by their nature, because they're so context dependent, are far more fluid. But also, there is a realization in the Royal Navy that on the treaty limitations and the abilities they have, they cannot, no one can, on the budget they are also given, and the treaty limitations, can have enough force. The whole point they have to do is to try and deter that kind of conflict. But the trouble is, as war goes on, it sucks in forces. So your deterrence forces, your forces you have in the Far East, you keep in the Far East even after war's begun, and even in the East Indies, even after war's begun, have to start to be wound down. Strategy, logistics, all those things are taught when we're talking about war. But there's one infinitely true truth. Until we develop TARDIS technology, one ship can only be in one place at a time. Worst of all, quite often that place will be a shipyard undergoing maintenance. So, one ship can only be in one place at a time. And when you have a war going on, the war has to take precedence, because whilst there is a strong possibility of war over there, there is war currently here, and here is right on top of the homeland. And here's what they're doing. Here is what 18th Cruiser Squadron be getting involved in. The hunt for the Bismarck, the hunt for the Scharnhorst and Eisenhower, the hunt for all these things. Norway, they're getting involved a lot. But really, the hunt for the Bismarck shows this best of all, because, well, you can't really see it, no matter how far I zoom this, expand this out. No matter how far you zoom in, it's very, very tiny, because it's a very, very large map if you go into the National Archives. But if you look next to Iceland, there is a weird boxy T shape, which is a lot of writing on it. And that is the barrier that 18th Cruiser Squadron maintain. Now, you'll also notice, if you look at this key, that Shiny Chef has her own symbology. As does HMS Edinburgh with 18, with Cruiser Squadron 18, where she's the flagship for this particular journey. And you have Cruiser Squadron 2 and HMS Victorious there, although there are currently no town class assigned to that squadron at that time. The same with Force H at this point. And we go into the next slide. You can see the forward teeth of that T, that watching box, are Manchester, Birmingham, and Arafusa. Yes, the two classes are united. There's also a whole load of armed merchant cruisers backing them up. It is always fun to have some armed merchant cruisers along. No one ever wants to go anywhere without an armed merchant cruiser for some fun. But, you know. You also, if you look at the full map of the final engagement, you have sighted Edinburgh occurring a couple of times, which suggests Edinburgh is having a bit of fun. Area of Ark Royal search. And you can see the movement of Edinburgh, where she's coming from in the south to get to the north. You can also see where the 4th destroyer flotilla turns up, of course, the lovely tribal destroyers under Vian with Pirin, which is lovingly spelt wrong on this map, but you know, they tried. Here is the big important thing to remember about the town class. Because of their size, because of their form, their structure, very few cruisers kept the sea as well as they did. So if you were dealing with harsh waters, i.e. the North Atlantic or South Atlantic, a town class cruiser was a really good thing to have. I'm not sure about HMS Birmingham considering her bow, but she did pretty darn well. Then there are the various action battles of Cert, but more importantly, there is the Battle of Spartivento. Cape Spartivento, which happens, as you can see, on the 27th of November 1940. So not long after Taranto. So this puts pair to the idea that the Italian Navy doesn't come out to sea because of Taranto. However, this is not the sort of engagement you want to be involved in if you are the Italians, because, yes, look down there is something called Ark Royal moving along. There is also Berwick, Ramillies, Newcastle, Greyhound, Defender, Harewood, Diamond, Gallant. Fairly large and capable force. There is also Southampton and Sheffield involved. It's just full of fun. And HMS Renown. You know, it's just a group that if you are the Italian Navy, you really do want to get to know. You really do feel this is a group you want to make friends with. Preferably at long range. Because Renown has Faulkner, Firedrake, Forrester, Fury, and Encounter with her. Yeah. As at long range as possible. But it is a battle which takes place. Manchester gets slightly damaged, but Newcastle, Sheffield, and Southampton, together with her and along with HMS Berwick, do manage to give the enemy a very nasty experience. Combine that with Ramillies and Renown giving their full-throated support, and you have a battle which, whilst it isn't as one-sided as both sides might wish, is certainly a very interesting battle for the context of the cruisers, and where the speed and maneuverability and firepower of the town class cruisers really shows up in comparison to their far lighter Italian compatriots. There's also Crete, which goes on, as we all know. There's the famous quote from Cunningham: "It takes the Navy 3 years to build a ship, it will take 300 years to build a new tradition. The evacuation will continue. It takes roughly 30 years to build a crew." But leaving that to one side, there is still the fact that Surgeon Lieutenant Commander Hugh Singer actually writes in an official document that his first impression when he entered the water was that it was agreeably warm, but soon found that water, which is pleasant for bathing, is not necessarily a suitable medium in which to spend a day and a night. I wholeheartedly agree, and also would like it pointed out that I feel that sometimes some of my listeners do not understand the kind of personality you're dealing with in the Royal Navy of this period or any period. I feel nothing illustrates it more than a surgeon lieutenant commander, a man of pure science in so many ways, a medic, someone who understands the human body intimately for the period, and who has professed care for all his kind, and that is what he writes. I love it. I think that shows all good things in terms of their strength of character, their fortitude, and their faith in themselves and in their duty. But I also think that if that's the medical nice guy, then the gunnery officer is probably... yeah. This all meant that in December 1941, when the Japanese did what they did in the Far East, the pre-war plans of Royal Navy Town-class cruisers going into the Pacific and destroying Japanese trade were undermined in part by the American embargo on Japanese oil. Come on! You cut off 80% of their oil supply, you don't expect them to do something? And more importantly, you cut off 80% of their oil supply, you get rid of all our targets! Here's the thing, I'm really happy every time anyone says that Chinese trade is increasing. It means there's more targets floating around the water to be taken out. Sorry, I shouldn't. We of course hope there isn't a war, but this is the point. You're actually a nation's more at risk the more of it is out there on the ocean. It's why Britain needs a navy. It's why America needs a navy. Economies, the more dependent the economy is on global movement of goods, the more at risk they are. Excuse me, sorry. It's still the well down cough thing. And it isn't helped by the fact today I haven't managed to, as said in earlier videos, it took me a while to get started recording. So instead of the forces being instead of 4th Squadron reinforcing 5th Squadron and going to do all sorts of nasty things to buy time and sap up Japanese forces as they try to hunt those cruisers down, so to buy time for the fleet to arrive and all these things, none of that could happen. But HMS Newcastle, and I do love Newcastle, leads the class return to the East in 1943. And here's my next point. Before we get into the Southamptons and all the class profiles that are going to be coming after this, here is my next point. I love HMS Belfast. I took my current girlfriend, and hopefully I love my girlfriend, so, you know, around Belfast on Valentine's Day in 2020. And no, I don't think the year has been getting me back ever since. She had a lovely time. It was a lovely trip and a lovely time. And I thoroughly recommend it to anyone who's interested. But there is part of me, a very solid and large part of me, which does feel rather like with the fact that no tribal class destroyers have been preserved and HMS Warspite and none of the armoured carriers have been preserved, that whilst I am appreciative of Belfast being preserved because of what she did do in World War II and what she did do in the Korean War, other members of her class could have been preserved quite happily in terms of deserving to be preserved, and Newcastle is certainly one of those. But it wasn't to be. What is to be, though, is you can go to Belfast and you can see what the largest version, most upgraded version of this town class design was like. You can see the treble turrets. You can walk through those turrets. You can see what a large light cruiser was like. You can walk around her and you can get a sense of what she was built for. Because I've taken students around her, and once you start to consider the size differential and thickness of differential between her and a battleship, you suddenly realize what a cruise was really for. It's all about commerce. Interdiction or protection, it is all about commerce. And those 6-inch guns really do illustrate that. Although, again, I wouldn't like to be, even those 6-inch guns have caused trouble to battleships in the past. Just ask Scharnhorst and the Battle of North Cape. So you shouldn't discount the 6-inch guns from a battle with a larger ship. And with the rate of fire they could achieve, especially the rate of accurate fire they could achieve once they had radar guidance, the amount of damage just goes up that they can cause. So good warships, yes. But you can tell what they're built for if you go around. And the engine spaces are something special. Right. As said, next video, part 5, will be the Southamptons. So, I hope you enjoyed part 4. Please, if you do then like, subscribe, maybe press the little bell down there, and check out Discord and Patron. It's just good. Discord is, as I said, feeds the soul. It's got some really good stuff going on there. I really am enjoying the meme channel coming in towards build trumps at this point. And I also have a long-standing, absolute, undying love for some of the discussions going on in the longer form sort of video proposals. Anyway, thank you very much. Hope you enjoy it, and hope you'll join me for part 5. Thank you. Take care.